From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I have a great multi-returning guest coming on. It's Roger Veer, the Bitcoin Jesus, which he doesn't really like that nickname, but that's what everyone calls him, so that's what I'll call him. But he also runs, of course, he has Bitcoin.com, which I should mention was the platinum sponsor for Acapulco and Cryptopoco. So he was just here in Acapulco a few weeks ago. He's actually, I believe, signed on to even be sponsored next year already. So very happy to have him back and happy to talk to you, Roger. The reason, of course, I want to have you on is there's a lot of talk going on right now about Bitcoin Unlimited and some potential hard fork. You've, of course, been one of the most strongest sort of people out there talking about how much you dislike how slow Bitcoin's getting and how expensive it's getting for the transaction fees and things like that. And you've basically proposed Bitcoin Unlimited as being a way to fix that. Bitcoin's been down recently in the last couple of days, quite dramatically, although it did rise quite dramatically. It's sort of been up and down between $1,000 and $1,300 for the last month. But a lot of people are saying that the reason it's down this time is because of speculation that Bitcoin might be hard forking and some of the people being worried about that happening. So definitely want to have you on. Of course, for people out there who don't know, I had Trace Mayer on just before this on the Dollar Vigilante YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen that, go over to Dollar Vigilante and check that out. And Trace has a different perspective on it than Roger, so I want to get both their perspectives. So Roger, thanks for coming in from Tokyo today.
Always a pleasure to be on with you, Jeff.
Yeah, my pleasure as well. Always a pleasure. And let's talk about this. What's going on? There's a lot of, seems like a lot of back and forth, a lot of anger, it seems like this whole issue has definitely sort of reached a new level.
Yeah, it's definitely reached a whole new level. For example, Bitcoin.com is my website. I'm the CEO of Bitcoin.com, and it's been under DDoS attack all week. People have been trying to attack and take the website offline. And no matter what your opinion is on the scaling debate, attacking other people's websites and trying to shut them down, as long as those websites aren't funded by stolen funds, you shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. And it's really, really disappointing to see just how much vitriol and hate and actual attacks on members of the community is going on due to this whole scaling debate. It's really, really sad and very, very different from the Bitcoin that I originally got involved with.
Yeah, that seems to be a bit of the tone coming from you, is a bit of disappointment with Bitcoin, a bit of anger, a bit of just unhappiness with how it's been going. But of course, I did see you in a recent interview, and I believe you did say you still have 95% of your cryptocurrency assets in Bitcoin. I know you've speculated in a few others as well because of this issue, from what I understand. But what's your take on what's going on right now? I know that there has been a lot of vitriol. What exactly is the status of what's going on right now with this possible hard fork?
So basically what happened in the last couple of years, a bunch of developers came into Bitcoin who don't understand why Bitcoin is useful as money. So I got involved in Bitcoin 6 years ago because I saw that Bitcoin was useful as money. And the things that make Bitcoin useful as money is that the fees are low, you can send and receive money with anyone, anywhere in the world, almost instantly, with very low risk of it being double spent. And today we have a bunch of developers that are involved with a group called Bitcoin Core, which isn't any more core or central to Bitcoin than anybody else, but they've managed to steer the ecosystem in a direction in which they're intentionally trying to have the fees for Bitcoin transactions to be high. They're intentionally trying to have the blocks be full, and by the blocks being full, that means your Bitcoin transaction that used to take about 10 minutes to be confirmed in a block, the average time recently has been about 2 hours for a transaction to be confirmed in a block. And for anybody that's trying to use Bitcoin in commerce or for payments, you know that paying a high fee and waiting hours for your transaction to be confirmed is going to motivate you to use something other than Bitcoin. Yet there's a bunch of developers that literally say that those things are good and those things are good for Bitcoin. And as someone who's brought more people to Bitcoin than just about anybody else in the world, I know the reasons why people want to start using Bitcoin. It's because low fees and fast and easy and safe transactions. And the current development team are working towards those exact opposite goals. So if we want to see Bitcoin become a currency that's used by people all over the world, it has to have fast, easy, safe, cheap transactions, which is what Bitcoin had for the first 7.5 years of its existence. And in the last 6 months or so, this group has really undermined those characteristics of Bitcoin that make Bitcoin useful as money. And if I can add one more thing, they seem to think that people are just going to use Bitcoin as a store of value. the reason people use anything as a store of value is because they think they'll be able to spend it later. And if Bitcoin's ability to be used for spending and buying things and used in commerce is undermined, people aren't going to use it as a store of value either. So I'm really, really concerned for that. Bitcoin's not guaranteed to be the winner of all the different cryptocurrencies in the world. Bitcoin could very well go the way of MySpace or Friendster, for people who remember that one even before MySpace.
Oh yeah, I remember.
A lot of these other, a lot of these developers that have gotten involved in Bitcoin now, they literally told me, Bitcoin has already won. Bitcoin is guaranteed to be the winning currency in the end. And of course, I own Bitcoin.com. Of course I want Bitcoin to be the winner in the end, but it's not guaranteed. And we have to make sure that Bitcoin continues to be the most useful currency in commerce if we want it to maintain its top spot. And a lot of these people don't seem to care about any of the characteristics that make Bitcoin useful as money.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to interview Trace Mayer before I interviewed you is because I felt like I understood your position a lot more than I understood someone like Trace. Not saying Trace is exactly one of these core people necessarily. I don't know if he is or not, but he seems to be a little bit more on the other side of things. One of the things he brought up was that segregated witness, or SegWit, would fix a lot of these issues, but am I right in understanding that you did not support segregated witness?
Sure. So segregated witness is a technology that was produced by these group of core developers that doesn't address any of the problems in the short term. Right now, Bitcoin transaction fees are higher than they've ever been. Confirmation times are longer than they've ever been. And Bitcoin on the actual network itself is less usable than it's ever been due to network congestion. So if you take one step back, like that's the best type of problem we could possibly hope for, is that so many people are using Bitcoin now that the network is crowded. But like any business owner knows, if you have a line of people lined up outside, your business and down the street and around the corner wanting to purchase from you, you expand capacity to make room for those new people to come and use Bitcoin. The segregated witness doesn't do any of that in the short term. It opens up a lot of long-term things that are interesting, and the Bitcoin Unlimited team isn't opposed to any of those long-term things, but none of those are urgent to solve the problems that we have right now today. A good analogy for it is, let's say you've been wandering in the desert for a week and you haven't had anything to eat or drink and you need a haircut. Well, segregated witness is the haircut, but any logical person knows once you make it back to civilization after wandering in the desert, you need to have something to eat and drink. And Bitcoin Unlimited is addressing the problems that Bitcoin has right now, like eating and drinking. And segregated witness, yeah, you should get a haircut at some point, but it's not urgent. And the priorities are completely backwards with the current core team and segregated witness versus Bitcoin Unlimited. We need to solve the problems that Bitcoin's experiencing today. And once those problems are solved, we can do the interesting things that segregated witness allows in the future.
If I understand it correctly, the main thing that Bitcoin Unlimited would do is increase the block size. What, in your opinion, is the reason why those people who support Core, don't want to increase the block size? Like, what is their reasoning for that?
So they have a couple of things that I think are misguided. So they're worried about Bitcoin being undermined by governments, and I share that concern. I want Bitcoin to undermine governments, not the other way around. And they're worried that if you increase the block size, it will take a more expensive computer to run a Bitcoin full node, which is true. But if you have more people using Bitcoin around the world, if you get to hundreds of millions or billions of people using Bitcoin around the world, even if it costs more to run a full node, you'll have a much, much bigger pool of people to draw from to potentially run these full nodes. So if you have a larger absolute number of full nodes, you're much more resistant to government control because of that. And then not to mention the social side. If you have 1 billion plus people using Bitcoin and governments try and say, oh, Bitcoin's only for bad people, people will stop and think to themselves, well, wait a minute, I use Bitcoin and I'm not a bad person. I won't believe the government. But if Bitcoin's limited to only being used by maybe 10 or 20 million people, and governments really try hard to demonize it as only a tool used for bad people, a lot of the people that aren't using Bitcoin might believe that. So we gain a lot of additional protection by growing our user base very quickly. We're likely to have more full nodes around the world, and we're likely to have a lot more political insulation from government pressure as well. So I see both of those things as very worthwhile. And then we have the huge risk, if we stall Bitcoin adoption, Bitcoin could become the MySpace of cryptocurrencies, and that would bring tears to my eyes if that were to happen. But that's a real fear with the current core dev team in place, actively trying to make Bitcoin transactions more expensive and slower than they've ever been before.
Yeah, it's interesting. So where exactly are things at right now? I know that Bitcoin is been down a few $100s in the last few days, and there's definitely some people, and I'm not saying they're correct, but some people seem to think it's because of this fork issue. Some people are saying that a lot of people are getting off Bitcoin and going into Dash and Ethereum, maybe a few others, just because they're unsure of the future of Bitcoin at this moment in time. So two-pronged question. First of all, do you think the recent decline in Bitcoin is because of fear of this fork? And the second part of the question is, where is this at? What could possibly happen with this potential hard fork? Could it happen tomorrow, for example, or is this still something that's just a possibility and just in process?
So there's a number, whenever the markets move, there's a bunch of different reasons. I'm sure some people are scared of a hard fork, and I'm sure some did sell some Bitcoins because of that. But then you have people like me. I'm excited. Bitcoin Unlimited is gaining ground. Bitcoin Unlimited has more hash rate than the current version of Core on the network, substantially more at this point. And if the price goes down much more, I'll probably buy a bunch more Bitcoin because I'm excited about it. I think the reason we've seen such a big shift into altcoins recently is, yeah, maybe there's some people that are scared of the hard fork of Bitcoin, but I think the main reason is that a bunch of people were holding Bitcoin because they were excited about the potential ETF that was coming. The ETF didn't come. Bitcoin transactions are more expensive and slower than a bunch of different altcoins. I think people, once they realized the ETF wasn't going to happen, Bitcoin lost some of its appeal there, and they moved into a number of altcoins. So I first became really concerned about this scaling debate towards last year, to the point where I sold, I don't know, somewhere around 1 or 2% of my Bitcoin holdings for some altcoins. And sadly for Bitcoin, those altcoins in that time have far outperformed Bitcoin. Bitcoin's about doubled in price in that time period. Most of the altcoins I bought went up about 10 times in price. That's a bad sign for Bitcoin. And I'm doing everything I can, because in terms of dollars worth of cryptocurrencies that I hold, Bitcoin is still, high 90+% of the value that I hold in cryptocurrency. So of course I want Bitcoin to win in the end. But I'm not a stupid investor either. If I can see that Bitcoin's headed in the right direction, I would sell Bitcoins for other cryptocurrencies that I think are headed in the right direction. And that's really sad for Bitcoin and sad for me as the owner of Bitcoin.com, but it's important that Bitcoin remains the most useful cryptocurrency out there if we want people to use it. It's much easier to switch from Bitcoin to another cryptocurrency than it is for someone to switch from dollars to euros or from euros to Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't ever want dollars anyway. I don't want to support terrorism or wars or drug smuggling like people do with U.S. dollars, although there's nothing wrong with drug smuggling. But where's this at, though? Like, it just seems like the vitriol is really high. It seems that people are worried about it. So there just seems this sort of impendingness to this. Is there something that you or Bitcoin Unlimited is planning on doing at a point soon? Or where's the status of where this sort of issue is at right now?
So one of the big reasons why people don't know and understand what's going to happen here is because of all the censorship that's been going on in the Bitcoin community being perpetrated by supporters of Core. You actively cannot discuss these issues on the most popular Bitcoin discussion platform. So lots of people that came to Bitcoin more recently are completely unaware of the things that are going on. And if the censorship would end, then people will, on both sides of the issue, would have a much, much better understanding of where both sides are coming from and what their view is. So what's actually going to happen is Bitcoin Unlimited is going to continue to gain hash rate. At the moment, I think it has just under 40% of the global hash rate. Once it gets to somewhere around 80% of the global hash rate, people will start talking about a flag date in which they're ready to actually mine the first block that's bigger than 1 megabyte. And for all the users of Bitcoin, very likely it's going to be a non-event for them whatsoever. There's very likely only going to be one Bitcoin chain. I think if we get to 80% of the hash rate with Bitcoin Unlimited, I think we'll get to 99.9% of the hash rate with Bitcoin Unlimited. So I don't think that there's even likely to be a second chain or a second version of Bitcoin. And if there is, that's not the end of the world either. Then both camps get what they want and they can go on their separate ways, and the market will decide which version of Bitcoin is the one that's most useful to them. And there's no doubt in my mind, if you have to choose between a really expensive to use and slow to confirm version of Bitcoin and a version of Bitcoin that's really cheap to use and confirms very quickly and safely, there's no doubt in my mind which one people in commerce are going to use. And the one that's used in commerce is also going to be the one that people use to store their value in. And I think the other one will wither away at that point. So I prefer if Bitcoin doesn't split into two chains. I think it's unlikely that it would, But if it does, it's not the end of the world either.
I think there is definitely some miscommunication that you brought up, because talking to Trace, he seems to talk like Bitcoin Unlimited is not supported by hardly anyone. He sent me a chart. I didn't really look at where it came from, but it seemed to show that Bitcoin Core had like 98% of the sort of support, and Bitcoin Unlimited had like 2%. So where is this discrepancy coming from, do you think, that Trace seems to think it has really no support, and you're saying it has a massive amount of support?
It clearly has a massive amount of support. It has more hash rate than Segregated Witness and Core's version of this. And the Core team, that's one thing I really didn't understand originally when the censorship started, and I understand now, is the censorship worked. So many people saw the only one side of the argument, and they didn't even get to hear the other side, and all these people that came to Bitcoin after the censorship started are completely aware of that. And there's a real interesting YouTube video where people are given an experiment, and they're shown, I think, 3 or 4 lines, and one line is longer than the other, and they ask the people in line which line is the longest line, and there's only one person that's actually part of the experiment, but they think that there's a dozen people, and this person that's part of the experiment watches the first 5 or 6 people in front of him say a line is longer than the one that actually is, and he can see with his own eyes it's longer, and then when he gets up there to the front and they ask him which line is longer, he lies and he says that it's the same line that everybody else says. Like 85% of the time that people do that because they don't want to break away from the grain or go and disagree with what all these other people in front of them were saying. And so I think we saw a lot of that happen with this debate. Anybody with any sort of dissenting opinion had their post deleted. So all these people that were new to Bitcoin came and they saw everybody saying good things about Segregated Witness, and you're only allowed to say bad things about Bitcoin Unlimited. And if they see everybody around them saying that on what is the most popular Bitcoin discussion platform, and the reason everyone's saying that is because anybody that says the reverse has their post deleted, they start to believe that, and they start to say that too. And I think it's really, really sad that that sort of thing has been going on in Bitcoin, but it very clearly has. But in regards to this list that Trace showed you, that's another example of social manipulation that's going on. They showed you a big list of companies that support Segregated Witness. Well, support can mean a couple of different things. It can mean actively in favor of, or support could also just mean compatible with. And so what's happened in the last year because of all the censorship, everybody on these censored platforms thought that Segregated Witness was going to fly through with 95% overnight. So everybody spent time getting their systems to be compatible with Segregated Witness. So when you see this list of companies that support Segregated Witness, what they actually mean is that it's compatible with Segregated Witness. A lot of these companies are completely agnostic in regards to whether or not that's the best scaling roadmap. And the vast majority of those companies are upset with the high fees and slow confirmation times of the Bitcoin network right now. And most of them are very upset with the core team's roadmap.
One of the things that you said earlier was that you think segregated witness fixes things in the medium and long term, but not in the short term. Are you against segregated witness as a whole? One of the questions that I asked some people, if they wanted to ask some questions, they're like, why don't you support SegWit with the Bitcoin Unlimited?
That's a question for the community to decide. In my opinion there, Segregated Witness, the problems that it solves are good things to solve. None of those problems being solved are urgent, and Segregated Witness might not necessarily be the proper way to solve those issues or the best way to solve those issues. So I think that there's plenty of time and room for more discussion as to what the best way to solve those issues are. In the meantime, we need to solve the issue at hand that Bitcoin transactions are more expensive than ever before and slower to confirm than ever before. That's a huge, huge, huge problem for the uptake of Bitcoin.
Yeah, very interesting. So for people out there who are watching, I know I've just seen a lot of panic on the interweb. People, Bitcoin's down, $200 or $250 the last few days, and it must be because of this fork issue. For people who are concerned about it, what would you tell them about a potential hard fork? For example, would your average person even really notice if there was a hard fork? Would they even have to do anything? Would they lose anything if they didn't, for example, choose one side or the other?
So for most people, the hard fork is probably going to be a non-issue whatsoever. If somehow there are made to be 2 chains of Bitcoin, then my advice for anybody that's a Bitcoin holder is just hold on to your Bitcoins and don't use them for a day or two while everything's settling down, and then spend a little bit of time reading online. Go to bitcoin.com. We'll post all the information there. It's exactly what people need to do in order to be able to access their coins on both chains. But I really think that that's not likely to happen at all. And I think because there's so much fear of that, I think that makes it even less likely to happen, and that whichever side winds up with the majority of the hash rate will make sure that none of that's even an issue for any of the average users.
So for your average person who wants to hold Bitcoin as sort of a store of value, they're not using it day to day and things like that. If they just didn't sell it during this period of time while this is all being worked out, they really would have no risk, except I guess the one risk, and this is something that has been brought up, is causing this much of a sort of a disturbance in the market could put a lot of people off of Bitcoin. So is that a concern of yours? That I know what you're trying to do, what you think in your mind is helping Bitcoin, but do you have any sort of concern that by causing this much of a ruckus, for example, that you could be actually damaging Bitcoin in some respects?
Yeah, I've lost track of how many times the media has said Bitcoin is dead, and that didn't hurt Bitcoin at all. More people are using Bitcoin today than ever before, and if anything, the volatility attracts more traders, because traders love volatility because they make a bunch of money there. And then once these traders come and start trading Bitcoin, maybe a number of them will start to understand the underlying technology and realize, oh wow, this is more than just some asset I can day trade with. This is a fundamentally world-changing technology that empowers every human being on the planet, assuming the transactions continue to work well and be low cost. And recently the fees have been so high that it's more money than many people in the world earn in an entire day's work. Like, that's a big, big problem. We can't expect people around the world to use Bitcoin if making a Bitcoin transaction costs more than they earn in an entire day. Yet that's the route that the Bitcoin core team has been actively and intentionally trying to go down, and that's terrifying for me as a large Bitcoin holder and someone who loves and supports Bitcoin.
Yeah, it is interesting. I just did talk with Trace Mayer. He makes some good points. You make some good points. It's really hard to kind of know even which side to root for. Really, basically, I'm just rooting this all works out. I'm sure it will work out. That's actually one of the great things about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general is, this is actually all a free market sort of experiment. It's actually fascinating to watch. If anything, it's just absolutely fascinating to see the free market work itself out, all without any sort. There's no Bitcoin CEO. There's no Bitcoin office. There's no government that regulates Bitcoin. Thank God. And it's as you pointed out, Bitcoin has gone through numerous problems in the past. I don't even remember how many that a lot of people were worried this could be the end of Bitcoin. And of course, the mainstream media, the fake news, will just jump all over it and say it is the end of Bitcoin, and it always works itself out. So from that perspective, it's wonderful to watch, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And I'll definitely be following. A lot of people will be following. Is there anything else you wanted to mention or talk about regarding this issue?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had a debate on Anarchast. I know you've had some at Anarchapulco in the past, but I would be more than willing to debate Trace Mayer or anybody else on this issue anytime, and I think that would be a fun learning experience for everybody on both sides of this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we'll definitely consider. We'll put up both these interviews live. As I mentioned, Trace is on the Dollar Vigilante channel. This is on Anarchast. And if this continues to be a issue that people want to get more sorted out and figured out, I'll definitely be very happy to have both of you on, and you guys can duke it out mentally and see what happens. I'm sure that'd be very interesting.
I would love that too. Thank you always for having me on, Jeff, and thank you for all the amazing work, and I'm really excited for Anarchapulco next year. Hurry up and get the website up for next year's Anarchapulco so people can start registering, because it's an amazing time. You won't be disappointed. Make sure that, for everybody watching, make sure you show up, because it's great.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've been such a great supporter of it, being Platinum sponsor last year with Bitcoin.com, and you already are going to be sponsor for next year, 2018. We haven't even started talking about it yet. We just finished the last one. I just got over a few weeks of just getting over the stress and all of the activity of that entire week. But it was great. For people out there, if you want to just follow what's going on, we're watching this at the Dollar Vigilante. We're watching it here on Anarchast, and we might have Roger and maybe Trace on to have a debate at some point if this continues on to be a major issue, and it looks like it is. It's not going away at any point soon, so we'll see what happens. It's going to be fascinating to watch. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.